Conventional shrimp farming practices are destroying the environment, people's lives, and consumers' health. The future should be very different, though. We'll now look into two shrimp farming startups that wanna revolutionize the industry through farming shrimp in boatloads of bacteria. Anyways, before that, let's get you up to speed on shrimp farming. Have you ever heard about mangroves? You know, the weird trees that grow in the sea? So the shrimp farming industry has allegedly destroyed close to 50% of mangroves in the last few decades. I mean, it wouldn't matter that much if the ecosystem didn't serve as the kindergarten for a big chunk of global ocean life. Also, in Asian countries like China, Indonesia, Thailand, India, and so on, giant pieces of perfectly fine and fertile land have been cleared and flooded with salt water, essentially killing them, to create new shrimp farms. Some other nasty practices involve the usage of antibiotics, algicides, pesticides, etc. to keep the intensive shrimp colonies alive. One of the favorite pesticides is endosulfan.
Endosulfan is a broad-spectrum insecticide. The impact of endosulfan on the marine environment is disastrous. It's a persistent chemical, it's an incredibly toxic chemical, it's one that affects nearly every element of the aquatic ecosystem, from snails through to fish, through to amphibians, all the way up the food chain. It has an impact. Endosulfan is banned in a huge number of countries around the world, and it's banned for a reason. That's because it's dangerous, that it damages the environment. So my message to consumers who eat prawns from ponds where endosulfan might be in use is, don't do it.
This all has two major consequences. First one is that when you go to the store, most likely you'll find only headless frozen shrimp. Reason for that is all the nasty stuff like antibiotics or even heavy metals tends to accumulate in the head, since that's where all the shrimp's organs are. So the industry wants to play it safe and doesn't sell you the head most of the time. But don't worry, the nasty stuff finds its way into the meat also. The second consequence is that the damaging land treatment practices damage also the communities that live there, because the people are generally poor, and since a big part of their land has been destroyed to farm shrimp, they are pretty dependent on the shrimp profit. And it gets even more interesting when the shrimp farm pesticides or even salt contaminate the water sources for irrigation of normal crops, which happens, and this makes the folks 100% dependent on the shrimp industry. This all leads to thousands upon thousands of people being enslaved and forced to farm shrimp. And I mean enslaved in the rawest sense possible, with all the violence and other coercive tactics. The global sentiment in the last few years though is that the whole shrimp industry is improving. Slowly improving, I should say. And this brings us to the enticing prospect of farming high quality shrimp locally thanks to indoor aquaculture. Which also means the boatloads of bacteria, but we'll get back to that later. So the best practice for farming any aquatic life in general in terms of efficiency is to recirculate the water. Hence the name recirculation aquaculture system. And that's what I was doing my research on for this video. I found out that for shrimp farming there is two major ways to do it. One of them incorporates the bacteria and other life, and it's called Biofloc. The other is called clean water aquaculture and involves much more technology. They both obviously have pros and drawbacks, but then I read this one comment under one video which made me doubt the whole industry altogether. It's written by a guy with over 40 years of experience in the aquaculture and shrimp farming space. And he claims that at that point in time, which was 7 years ago, there were exactly 0 profitable shrimp farming businesses that would utilize RAS in the US. Now, he also claims that there were many attempts to run such a business, but they all failed because of the assumption that they'll be able to sell all of the shrimp for premium. So our fella Darvert M. Dagger here goes on to criticize the university which made the video for trying to research the Biofloc system, which should be a fairly mature technology by now, and instead recommends that they research the economies of scale of this endeavor so that it actually makes for a viable business plan. And I don't blame him for that, it makes sense. But here we have a company founded in 2020 that's still in business and sells premium shrimp. It's called Transparency and they are based in Downey, California. Apparently, Transparency uses both of the RAS iterations, but the founder, Steve Sutton, seems to be more fond of the clear water one, which is interesting because it costs more to set up and more to run, yet he manages to keep the lights on. I think one of the biggest reasons why is that the farm is in a foodie area with high-end restaurants all over the place. And of course, a high-end restaurant wants the best ingredients possible for their guests, so it works out. Now, I said that the clear water system costs way more to set up than the Biofloc one, because you need a lot of filters, almost a full-on sewage treatment plant to be exact, and some other technologies. But that allows you to be able to control much more happenings in the system. The most interesting one, I would say, is that you can be as efficient with your feet as it gets. Watch this. Thanks to the water being clear, you can see the shrimp, or technically prawns in this case. And this allowed Steve to install cameras in his tanks. And now, with hundreds of hours of shrimp footage, he was able to teach a computer to recognize different behaviors. And based on that, feed just the right amount. Now, that's the kind of efficiency you can't get in any other system, which is cool. And then we have Atarraya. This company was founded in Mexico 12 years ago, and for the whole time up until 2023 they were allegedly perfecting their shrimp box farming system. So it's basically a shipping container reinforced with some more steel, and it's full of shrimp. Each unit is set to produce 1.6 tons of shrimp annually, which is equivalent to about 2 acres of an outdoor farm. Now, these containers use the Biofloc system, and what this essentially means is that there are no filters involved. But it isn't that easy. You see, it's designed to mimic nature. For the system to work properly though, it can't contain just whatever bacteria. You have to provide the right kind of microbial life and algae and so on. Once you have that, the farmer has to balance the shrimp with the Biofloc so that a resilient symbiosis emerges. It should work like this. The farmer provides feed. The shrimp eat it. The rest goes to the Biofloc. The shrimp also eat the Biofloc. And when you have excess Biofloc, you can harvest that and burn it to heat up the water, for example. So according to Atarraya's business plan, the container has 90% less energy costs for heating compared to an equivalent clear water system. And thanks to the container being completely isolated, you also don't have to rent a warehouse. The farmer can just place it in the parking lot or wherever and watch the cash come in. Now, the thing is that Atarraya wants to sell you 20 of these at a time. So with the price tag of 48 large ones a piece, that's almost $1 million for startup costs. On the other hand, according to the business plan, the startup costs are 60% lower than for a same size Clearwater operation, and the running costs are 40% lower. Also, the alleged return on the investment should be in the low 20s. While if you set out to farm poultry, for example, it would be only 5% and 12% for farming hogs. Putting that aside, Atarraya has moved from Mexico to Indianapolis and is working on their second location there already, which should be this interestingly looking, hopefully stable and also efficient pyramid of 6 stacked shrimp boxes. Essentially, what they wanna do, whether through enabling independent farmers or through making their own farms, is to build out the indoor American high quality shrimp farming industry from the ground up. So I'm gonna wish them luck and thanks for watching.